and a happy Friday! Welcome to the 2022 editions of Flat Files, a program where Kyle and I meet up with an artist and we chat with them for a little bit about their practice, we look at their studio, and we share some art. This week we talked with our regular collaborator, Josh Dannin, in his shop in New Hampshire. We talk about how Directangle came to be, some of the experiences of starting your own print studio. We shared some work and learned about some projects that Josh has on the go right now, and the most recent edition of Power Washer, and an upcoming show that he has going up in his hometown. Well, I guess not hometown, but current hometown. And anyways, we hope you enjoy, and if you can like and subscribe and do all those things that we always ask, that would be amazing for us. If you have any printmaker friends who might enjoy this programming, be sure to send this along to them so that they can learn about Josh, learn about printmaking, and follow us on this fun journey in Flat Files. So, obviously, welcome back again, Josh. As always, we love having you on here. It's like, it feels like we have to like either begin the year or end the year with you now. You're like the bookend of our Sparkbox life, especially when it comes to Flat Files. So, we're happy to check in, see what your plans for 2022 are, and what you got up to. Because I feel like the last time we chatted, it was our anniversary, like our Sparkbox anniversary.
Yeah.
August? Last August?
No, June maybe?
One of those months.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It feels like a big jumbly time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. It's an honor to be here with you both. And I feel like this is actually quite appropriate because this is now the second start of a year that you guys haven't been people that I've seen like first thing in that year.
I know.
Which is very strange.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the three of us have spent like Christmas and New Year's together.
For like 8 years?
Yeah, somewhere. I think we were supposed to hit 10 years last year, and then everything, just got ruined.
Yeah, then everything got ruined.
It did get
There's really no other way to describe it.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, we're a few days behind wishing each other Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 week.
Well, I know that there's some things that you've been working on for the new year. Can we talk about those things?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you introduce yourself.
You may know more about them than me.
I'll let you introduce yourself first, just because, like, in case, people that are watching this one haven't seen the previous other episodes we've done to you. But I'll make sure I link all of those in the description so that if anybody wants to, like, watch, like, a 2-year journey of the three of us chatting on Flat Files, they can. I think the first one you were in your original studio, or, like, your old studio.
Yeah, things have definitely shifted in those 2 years. That's for sure. Yeah. So I'm Josh Dannin. I run a studio called Directangle Press in northern New Hampshire in the White Mountains. So that's where I'm at now. And I do letterpress printing, woodcut, linocut, all that kind of stuff, and risograph printing here in the shop. Prior to the pandemic, we started an artist residency that Chrissy and Kyle were so kind to jury for the first round of it. And we had our first resident in January of 2020 and our next call and lined up 2 more people, and then everything shut down. So, so that was at that point a budding new venture for the studio. And now, 2 years have gone by or whatever it's been, and nothing has happened there. But yeah, so I guess that's my brief introduction. Did I cover everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think like at some point in the conversation, I want to dive into more about like the sort of starting of the shop and some ins and outs of that.
Start that now.
Do you want to just do that and then talk about what you've been up to? Okay, cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so like I feel like questions that we get asked a lot that I don't ever get to ask other shop owners, I'm now just going to like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get to ask these questions. So when you decided you wanted to like start your own shop, can you talk a little bit about like why you made that choice instead of just like working in another person's studio?
Yeah, so I came across letterpress printing in undergrad. I primarily worked with woodcut, as a maker, and I was carving a lot of type, and I didn't know that movable type already existed, right? So someone told me about that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So they didn't have letterpress stuff at my undergrad, which was Kutztown University in Pennsylvania, between Philly and New York City. So I kind of started digging around for stuff that I could use on my own because I was fascinated by this movable type and the printing process. And I also saw a Vandercook, I think, around that time for the first time, and was also like, wow, this is, the best version of what I could imagine working on. So I think finding out about letterpress printing, I guess formally, and the components involved, and being immediately drawn to that stuff and not having access to it, immediately started kind of this quest of me looking for it to have on my own. And that combined with being a collector of stuff, traditionally throughout my entire life, and also being somebody that really likes tools and likes working on machines and working with my hands, it just felt like the right thing to have my own equipment. So that was kind of the way it started in terms of why I was seeking it out. And I think that I got my first press in 2009, a small tabletop proofing press, and my first few pieces of wood type that the guy who sold it to me threw in. One of which I just used for the first time, this random letter last month for a beer label design. Of all the things that ended up in this, was like one of the first pieces of type I was ever given. And actually, it was from Brian Christopher Baker, who runs now Striped Light down in Knoxville.
Oh, okay.
He sold me my first press when he was in Brooklyn. So it's been cool to kind of be in touch with him off and on throughout the past, now decade plus. But anyway, I think we were actually there together, in 2015 at Striped Light.
Yes,
yeah, we were.
So was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you were here, I feel like, when you purchased one of your printing presses.
Your first Vandercook?
Yeah. Yeah, I distinctly remember coming across. It was my first flatbed cylinder press. It's a Reprex, and it's built exactly like a Vandercook Universal One. And I came across it, I think, when I was sitting at your kitchen table.
Yeah.
And then I remember we were at Alex Fita's house when I got the call from the guy, and I ran upstairs and was like, it was before you could call for free between Canada and the States. I think this was 2013 or 2014. So I was like, and I couldn't get the guy money, so I was talking to this guy from Canada back in the States, and then calling my dad to see if he could write a check for me that I could send back to him just to make all this all work so he wouldn't sell this press. Yeah,
was that the one that was in the basement and you had to carry it up stairs that were narrow and went one direction and then turned and went another direction outside? Oh yeah. Yeah,
it was basement stairs in Amesbury, Massachusetts, which oddly enough is only a couple hours from where I am now. And I took that press up these stairs with the help of some friends. The staircase was in a corner, and you had to go up 3 stairs, turn the corner, and then up, I don't know, 7, 8 more stairs, and then turn the corner out the door. And we cleared it with the press by a quarter of an inch. And we didn't know that until we were up there. It's not like we could have just as well gotten up there and been screwed,
Yeah.
Because it was hard to calculate that turn, beforehand. But I bought that press from this guy in Massachusetts, proceeded to drive it down to Philly, then drive it to Ohio, then drive it to Pittsburgh, then New Hampshire, and now I'm back a couple hours from where I started, which is kind of absurd. Kind of makes me upset a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, when you've moved presses that many times, you get upset about moving those things. They're not.
I have it down to a science now, though.
What's your science?
For better or for worse, I'm not sure. Come along winches, lots of ratchet straps, trailers. Johnson bars, the greatest tool for maneuvering presses that I've ever. I'll grab it at some point. It's like a crowbar that has wheels on the bottom of it, and it has a 6-foot arm, so you can lift I think 2 tons or something, maybe depending on the length of it, and just prop it up. They're amazing.
We found when we had to move our Vandercook, 4-arm forklifts. Mm-hmm. So it's just wide orange straps that you wrap around your forearms. A couple of people can pick up a Vandercook and carry it down a flight of stairs with those things. It was unbelievable. I've never gotten the opportunity to use the come-along winches. Whenever we've had to move a press, it's been out of a sketchy porch, and there's just nothing to attach them to.
Yeah, the last press we moved was out of the back of Station Gallery, which is a really great gallery space.
It was that one.
But it was in their back sort of
loading
dock, and it was even though it was on a loading dock, was still just such a pain.
Well, it was a 1-bay car garage loading dock, but it was at loading dock height, which is meant for transports, not a flatbed truck. So we had to we had to dismantle this this lithography press that was I think 10 feet by 4.5 feet, a big thing, and carry it out of the loading dock and out onto a truck. I think we were actually using Alex Fita's van.
Yeah. Thank you again, Alex Fita.
Alex Fita Services again.
Oh, man.
This is probably a great time to thank all the people who have helped me move equipment
I know.
In the past decade.
No, seriously.
Like, in different states, in different places, like I've moved presses from Alabama to Pennsylvania to New Hampshire, from Detroit, for like all over the place. And just like, people are wonderful. So thank you all, friends, and that have no idea what printmaking is, and those who do. That still volunteer, even though they know what kind of
what they're getting themselves into. No, it's so true. We feel like endlessly indebted to the people that have helped us move presses, because it's not only like a labor-intensive process, but sometimes it's a little bit dangerous.
It's always a little dangerous,
and it takes a lot of time. And like it's just,
and you just pray nothing breaks.
Like a person's legs or the press. I mean, I'm really actually rarely worried about the presses themselves.
Really, I was always worried. Like when we'd ratchet strap down the Vandercook, and like you'd be like, okay, like please don't cut into any of the gear. Like don't cut. Like just be okay. Because like all it takes is like one of those components to like snap or break or get like pinched and bent, and then like you won't find it again. You have to get it like machine made.
You need a good relationship with your local machinist. That's what you need.
Yeah, I don't have that.
So when you got the presses, and like, so you have this your first press with your couple pieces of type. At that point, were you like, I'm just going to officially like start my own shop, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to do X with it? Or did like the idea sort of percolate over time, and then like every year sort of morph into something different?
Yeah, I mean, at first I was just using the stuff to make my own, work, and that I had it set up at my parents' house in Philadelphia. I had a space that was like was originally like my drum room, like a drum studio, which I can get more into later. That gradually kind of shifted from like entirely just a drum studio to half print shop, as I got more obsessed with this new collection of things, and it wasn't until 2014 that I formally started Directangle Press. So at that point, I think I set it up formally in my parents' house. I was living back home for 9 months, 8-9 months between undergrad and grad school. This would have been like a few months after I came to the first residency with you guys. And that stretch before moving to Ohio for grad school. I was like, I was working at Second State Press in Philadelphia a couple days a week as a fob holder. I was playing music 3 or 4 nights a week to like exist, and then making work, during the day at my parents' house. And I think I decided by the time I finished undergrad that I was like definitely my plan was to go to grad school to figure out like my art practice and my work and what I was doing, and not to teach. I decided at that point, like I liked the idea of teaching, but I didn't want to become like a professor, like as my long-term goal. And I decided around that time too that I wanted to have the studio for the sake of collaboration. So once I got to grad school I got to grad school at OU in 2012. In 2014, I moved everything that I had in Philadelphia to Ohio, including this press, the bigger press we were just talking about, to build a pop-up letterpress setup for Amos Paul Kennedy Jr., who was coming in as a visiting artist. So that kind of gave me a reason to get everything out. And then shortly thereafter, I think around the same time, I had come up with the studio name and was ready. It was the second year in grad school, was kind of looking ahead towards after school at that point. And Todd Irwin and I had moved into a larger studio.
Yeah.
And that was like this massive space. Yeah, I don't know how big it was formally. I'd be curious to know. It was huge, but we each had this half of an entire space. It was at least like 25 feet long. It was probably like 20 by 25 or like 25 by 25 feet, something like that. And I moved all of my equipment into one half of this space and formally started my studio operation on the property of Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and like started bringing artists in to like collaborate on stuff into my grad space.
Yeah, so good.
So free rent and our
wait. Grad school's not free, so
well, sort of. I mean, I don't know. You could argue, there was labor involved for sure, but I guess space that wasn't being rented elsewhere maybe is the better way to put it. Yeah, I should look at my student debt.
Or don't.
Or don't. I don't plan on revisiting that for 30 years.
No.
But yeah, so I don't know if I jumped ahead in your question, but basically it was kind of like an evolution from year to year, from things shifting to primarily focusing on my own work to then really getting into that mode of like working with other people, visiting artists a lot during grad school, and really liking that kind of ongoing dialogue. And it was sort of like this whole vibe of an interdisciplinary collaborative environment all the time is so incredible. And how do you keep that going once you leave that setting?
Yeah.
I mean, grad school was great for the classes, but it was primarily about working alongside other people in such a way, every day for 3 years. Our last year was an open thesis year, and it was really just kind of like this mess of making all kinds of stuff, for our final exhibitions. And I think at that point, I think I spent my third year, of course, working on my thesis show, but also like working out projects with other artists. And that was when we did the first SGC Publishers Fair together.
Yeah.
That I came and joined you guys. And I definitely hit a certain point in grad school that I was almost more invested in like what I was going to be doing next for my own studio than like obsessing over my thesis show. Because I was like, this is great. Like I care about this 100%, but it's like a show. And as soon as I'm done that show, I'm going to be looking at the next show. So like I also have to think about, all this other stuff, which everyone deals with,
So the like collaboration part of Directangle, I guess like I actually don't fully even know exactly how this like comes about for you. Like, so maybe you could talk a little bit about what you mean when you say collaboration, so that there's like a clarity for folks that maybe aren't printmakers and don't know like how shops coordinate and collaborate with artists, print or otherwise. And then I am personally curious about like how those collaborations come to be. Like, are you reaching out to people that you're excited to work with, or are people connecting with you because they want to work with the shop? Or maybe it's both.
Yeah, I mean, it's both. I mean, at this point, it's both. Early on, when I got things going, I initially started the studio primarily to be a platform for working with and making prints with other artists. So that was like my goal of forming this thing. And when I say collaboration, I guess it can go in one of two ways. I mean, printmaking, being a process medium, all the above, that depends on specialized equipment and process to make the work, of course, requires having access to that stuff to do it. So whether you're a printmaker that's seeking access to that stuff, or you're an artist that saw a print and you're like, how can I make something like that? I don't really traditionally work that way. There's always a need to sort of have the potential to like, share equipment, work with other people, work with printers, whatever it may look like. So I spent a lot of time, both, I guess for like the past 15 years traveling around the country and I guess North America as a whole, and stopping in print shops and like meeting people and just liking to hang out in these spaces. So a lot of the people that I've worked with have come from just like that organic relationship building. Whether it's something that like, whichever direction it ends up coming from, like, hey, let's do something together, or, me seeking them out or whatever. It's kind of happened a little bit more organically in that sense. Early on, I was, definitely looking at artists that I really wanted to work with and admired, and some of them were printmakers. And it was kind of like, all right, well, you can make this on your own, so like, why should we work together? And then it was like, oh, well, I really want to work with you. What can we do together that's obviously still your work, but a little bit different than the traditional way you work? Do you usually work in this format? Do you usually work in a flat stock, single print format? Let's make a book or something bound or an object. Do you usually work in bulk format? Let's make a suite of prints, like whatever it may be.
Right.
And then for people that weren't printmakers, you kind of like do whatever. Or even if it's somebody that doesn't work traditionally in a relief-based process,
right,
that is more so an etcher. I mean, there's a lot of room even within the printmaking realm to like push and pull things in that regard. So I really like that opportunity to do that. And that's not exactly a business model. I mean, there is a business model there if you have like tons of money and you're, a famous editioning shop in New York City.
Right.
Like on that topic of like editioning shops, like when you work with these people and say you produce like a suite of prints, do you split the edition with them and they keep half and you keep half, or do you like monetize that project at all?
Yeah. So I've actually sort of like, this is something that I've allowed to sort of evolve like case by case. My primary goal was always to be 50-50 regardless. So the way that we've always done it has been like, we cover the costs of like the materials, say, with like the first few sales. So there's no like loss on either side. That's something we talk about, an artist and I will talk about early on in the process to kind of figure out like what works for them. And I've done both, splitting the edition 50-50. So I keep half the edition, the artist takes half the edition, and we do whatever we want with it. Whether it's just keep a stack of prints. I've had artists that like sell primarily with galleries, and then their work goes to the gallery and the gallery sells it. And we agree upon a price, of course, so we're not like, messing with each other's pricing. I've also done it where it may be beneficial to sell the entire edition through my shop and split the selling cost. Because I do a lot of publishers fairs and used to do a lot of publishers fairs. I still work online, but that's kind of like not my main, stream of sales. And just getting the work out there in places that artists may otherwise not reach, or a different audience at a book fair maybe, or a fair of bound work. Mm-hmm. And in that case, it's just splitting the sales after the fact. So it evens out to being the same thing, arguably, slightly different ways. I haven't done a new edition throughout the pandemic. I don't think. That might be wrong. So if we've worked together, I apologize. Everything's a blur. I'm always talking to people about projects, and frankly, like, there have been a bunch of projects that were just being talked about at the start of the pandemic, and things that have been casually discussed during the pandemic that like haven't formulated, just based on like the mental fog of really just having trouble making, whether it's like my own stuff or work with other people, or even client work. Like, it's just been difficult. So,
well, and you moved.
Yeah. And my life has moved at least once during the pandemic. So now it's like, being planted somewhere. I think that we are in this space, which is, I'm not moving the shop again until I'm, rolled out of here on a dolly as an old man. So this is like the forever shop.
J bar out to wheel you out of the shop.
Totally. I think now that we're, in a location that this is it. I feel like there's an opportunity to really kind of be like, all right, whenever we do a collaborative edition, like, the edition's always split, 50-50 with the prints, or it's always just sold exclusively through the studio and print, and then the money split. Like, I feel like I'm ready, just based on not having as much of a meandering existence, to have sort of like set ways that I do it.
Right.
So yeah, part of it has been flexibility, just based on like things evolving, every year.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of all of that, I mean, you're teaching still, and you also create, publish, produce. I don't even know like how you describe what you do with the zine. I was curious, like, how Power Washer came. It is Power Washer, right? It's not Pressure Washer.
Power Washer.
Okay.
Power Washer zine.
Yeah. So how did that come to be? I'm assuming it was like birthed out of being in the same studio space, like you and Todd together. But like, what was the sort of like, the starting point of that? And then how does that like feed into your practice? Like, do you see that as like kind of its own little thing, or is it like part of what Directangle produces? Or like, what's the like mingling or lack thereof of that particular project?
It's definitely like its own thing. I mean, it's I guess on paper it's published by Directangle Editions, to kind of like keep it cohesive with the studio. And at that point, we did the first release in 2016. Wow, that's a while ago. At SGC in 2016, Power Washer 1. And at that point, Todd hadn't formally started his studio Bitmap Press yet. So part of it just kind of came out of like the timing of which studio was I guess formally situated or whatever.
Right.
The first one came about. It actually was born like after we finished school. So Todd Irwin and I, Todd is I Print Fake Shit on Instagram, awesome artist and designer, runs Bitmap Press in Chicago. Primarily a screen printer, refuses to print t-shirts. And I think that's the rundown of Todd's. That's Todd Irwin. Todd's one of my best buddies, and we were housemates and studio mates in grad school at Ohio University from 2012 to 2015. And we were talking about, like, at the end of grad school, working on something like Power Washer together. Like, there weren't really parameters for it or anything yet. And part of it came out of, I was a regular contributor to printeresting.org, the internet printmaking publication, for a couple of years. And as that was winding down, Todd and I were like, well, like, there's going to be this void, we should do something. And around the same time, I was coming into my first Riso printer. And it was like the purchase of that sort of was inspired by us wanting to do something like Power Washer, but we didn't know what it was yet or anything. So fast forward a year later, I guess, or maybe the end of 2015, Todd put together these interviews and kind of like mocked up this first Power Washer and flew up to New Hampshire. He was in New York at the time. He took the train up to New Hampshire. I remember picking him up in Boston. And we basically kind of collaborated on putting together the physical formulation of the first issue. Yeah. He created all the content and did the book design, and he's continued to do like all the layout and book design, since then. And we put the first issue together with like Scotch tape and like cut up printouts. Like it was literally cut up with like X-Acto knives and taped onto things. At that point, the Riso printer I was using was all scanner bed based, so we just like were using it like a punk rock, copy machine or something, but printing with like teal and orange and like weird colors. So it kind of came about just like that, like it was not like a formal thing. It sort of just turned into that, and then from there, it was the first one was really well received, and we were like, we have to make more of these. So we just kind of it got more once I formally sort of joined Todd after the first issue in kind of like the interview process and like creating content. I guess when we became formally co-editors, we kind of like split the duties of like talking to different people. And I think that second issue has Alexander Henry, who was Andy Warhol's printer that Todd went and interviewed. And just like we have now, I think over 50 artists in 8 issues that we've either interviewed or they've contributed in some essay format or something.
Which is really
and our good
cool.
buddy, it's a lot of fun. And our good buddy John Irving has worked with us on a lot of stuff over the years, and he just formally kind of joined as a formal third co-editor.
That's awesome.
After the 8th issue, and we haven't like started working on the next thing yet, but it's just been a lot of fun. So
it is like such a lovely like publication, and I think that there was and still is like, is all of this online? It is, right?
Yeah. So well, this is the brand new physical printed copy of Power Washer 8.
Amazing.
And this actually came out online as a free PDF in April of 2020, April of last year, like right at the start of the pandemic, or I think right after the first lockdown, because we were supposed to release this in person, like at an event that we were doing. It was going to be released at a release event at my old studio in outside of Manchester, New Hampshire, and then we were supposed to release it at in Houston at a print fair. And then, of course, everything got canceled. So this was available online as released as a free e-zine. It has Elizabeth Kovach, Anna Tyrova, Laura Brown, Brainstorm, Helena Blanco, Doug Eberhardt, and John Irving. And this was one of those projects that, I don't know if you guys relate to this, but this is one of the things for me that throughout the pandemic, I like couldn't get finished. Like I just had to produce it, like print it and bind it. Todd sent me the cover screen printed. I had to finish 2 spreads because the printed version has 4 additional pages than the online version, because we created the online version and then we were like,
it has to be folded and collated into a book.
Because it wasn't going to be bound, right? So, and like many people, creating has been hard for the past however long. So like I just finally sent out like the first bunch of these to the people that pre-ordered them right before Christmas, and it's been like looming over me for a long time. So if anybody had pre-ordered one, thank you for your patience. So I think we're sold out of 5 or 6 of the 8 now, because we print them in editions of 100. So
that's so awesome.
We've done a second edition of the second one, and I think we've been talking about doing second editions of some other ones. We're sold out of much more than I think we realized. I was just filling some orders recently, and there are only like a few left of number 6 and number 7. And I think we have a handful of number 2 and number 5. And it just kind of depends on, who has what, who orders what when. Somebody might randomly pick one up at a book fair and get like that one and not have any of the other ones, So it's a lot of fun though. It's fun to just like continue working with Todd and John on stuff, and then talk to all these cool people that make awesome work.
Well, and like you said, like I think Printeresting had created this like really vibrant space, and it had a lot of like draw to it, and it was having this conversation about printmaking, contemporary printmaking, that really like just doesn't get a lot of attention in the art world, especially in Canada. I would say like our art scene's pretty quiet in general, and then the print scene is like like a whisper. So having something in place that like continues that conversation and is like playful and fun. Like I think that's something that I love so much about what you two like bring to Power Washer, is like it's like intellectual and engaging and insightful about that part of the art world, but it's also like funny and I don't know, just like there's some fun in it that makes it like attractive and has that like you said, sort of punk rock, like early zine passion that, you know, existed. Maybe it's because like you have a bit of a like band background that like it has that sort of like underground kind of like, it feels like you're getting into a secret little club when you have one around, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. It's kind of interesting to hear it talked about, I think, you know, from like another perspective, which is really cool. I wish like Todd was here. So we should like pop in Todd's head. You know? Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think that it's evolved over the past few years and was really starting to like kind of pick up some momentum. I feel like in the year leading up to the shutdown, we did a release event at SGC in Houston that was a lot of fun, where we printed condiments on sandwiches and
so gross.
And I think we sold like half the edition of zines like right then and there the day they came out, and then printed like 215 sandwiches for people. And then we did a couple months later, we did a giant exhibition in Cleveland with artists that had been featured in the zine leading up to that point. And it was this massive gallery that we worked with Anna Tararova, who's contributed to this latest issue. So it's become like kind of also a platform for us to start like proposing projects and doing things. And we actually had a really fun proposal put together for the conference now, I guess like a year and a half ago. I don't even remember which one it would have been, that was going to be like a, you know, another kind of like happening kind of thing. And I hope we keep making them. You know, it's been a lot has evolved in the past, you know, year and a half, just with like everything, you know. So, but it's nice to just have something that's fun, and not that it's low stakes, but it's like it can just be what it becomes organically a little bit, you know, depending on who's in it or who wants to contribute, or like what colors we want to work with, you know. Like this one's printed
there's no consistency of the colors other than being
this is printed in 2 different greens. This is a collage of heads that I'm not going to elaborate on. And this is the centerfold. Each issue has a center spread by an artist included in the publication. So this one is Brainstorm, who's a collaborative screen printing duo, a couple based out of Dover, New Hampshire, Jason Snyder and Brianna. I don't know how to pronounce Brianna's last name, Brianna Fiola. And so they do these awesome maps of different states in New England that have these really great little illustrations throughout them. So
I love that.
It's a little pop out there.
Yeah, it's nice.
And, it's super fun.
Do you think that you could take us on a tour?
I can. So I will warn you that my studio, well, I don't know. I always feel like my studio is messy, and then like it actually is like very organized, but I don't know. There's like parts of my studio that I'm like working on, and as a result, there's lots of boxes piled up. So just ignore the box. There's a lot of corrugated cardboard around.
I think every print studio has like a ton of corrugated cardboard.
Yeah. I'll take you from the front door. I think we might have done like a mini version of this when we first set up shop here.
Yeah, when you first moved.
Yeah, and it's evolved quite a bit since then. So just to kind of give you a setup, so we've got this space in New Hampshire, up in the White Mountains in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. We're about 60 miles south of the Canadian border and 20 miles east of the Vermont border. So we're situated 2.5 hours from Montreal, Portland, Maine, Burlington, Vermont, and Boston, to give you a little bit of like a framework here. Yeah. And we kind of got it with like the residency that we were working on in mind too. So this is the house, and you can see it's covered in snow right now.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can really see, we're right kind of like on the side of a mountain. So like we're situated, you know, half of our town's in White Mountain National Forest. So anyway,
so pretty. So
the house is right there. You know, at some point when we have the residency running, you know, people will be able to stay in the house and then just come back here and work in the shop. Much like Sparkbox Studio, which was a huge inspiration for this chaotic venture.
Welcome
so thank you guys.
Chaos. Oh, you're welcome. No problem.
So anyway, so this is from the front door here, and I don't know if I'm holding it straight or anything. So this side of the space is like kind of my clean entryway workspace, and some binder equipment over here, a press that never gets used, and our heating setup, which is pellets.
Nice. Bags and
then
pellets.
Come over here, and this is the main space. So the overall footprint of the building is about 1,000 square feet. So I guess this main room over here is something like 30 by 25-ish, something like that. So I've been moving things around a lot here. So back here, I have one of the Riso printers.
Yep.
I have a giant hydraulic paper cutter.
So slick.
That's my pile of boxes back there.
Ugh, disgusting.
Dealt with. That's horrible. I have this etching press that I need to finish up. I just rearranged some things. So our second Riso printer's over there. Have 2 proofing presses over here. Is everything translating all right?
Yeah, it looks great.
So this first one in front here is the one that we were talking about earlier that I purchased from Canada.
Yeah.
And the second one, this is my Vandercook number 4T that I drove up from Birmingham, Alabama area, just before the lockdown, or before the pandemic entirely, and restored this and rebuilt it during the first lockdown. And I just moved my golden jobber over here, which I feel much better about. So I have a fresh organization for the new year.
That's great.
And
then you have sort of like
here.
a central like paper station in the middle.
Yeah. So this is a 4 foot by 8 foot old like packing table, like a butcher block table. And I have everything from prints that I'm working on, stuff I'm binding, the paper creaser. These are some prints that are brand new that I'm working on for a show coming up. And some other storage and stuff down below. So I've really tried to make the space like super functional for my workflow.
Yeah.
And the workflow of others that wouldn't necessarily be working long term in here, but would want an easily navigatable and functional space. If you were like doing letterpress, your proximity between the press and the furniture, or like whatever spacing material, easy access to things. Stuff like that. And that's kind of come from like, working in different studios that I've popped into, for brief periods of time over the years.
Yeah. Is there water out here?
There's not water.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything that I do for process wise is, doesn't really require water to use. I do clean up, as non-toxic as possible, but I use like baby oil, and I still end up doing like a final wipe down with like some Gamsol or something. But no water out here, just a lot of power. a lot of power. So we're going through a lot of electricity out here. It's actually not too bad. It's just to have a dedicated space.
Yeah, it is. The overhead of running a shop is always, because you have to keep it heated all the time too. That's like weirdly something I didn't consider when we like had a shop that was like in its own little building, was that you can't just like let it get super cold, because then all your
Josh could without water. It's not great for the machines, but like
our like emulsion and stuff, like it can't freeze. Yeah. So
I guess that's true.
Yeah, I had in my old shop, the space I had prior to this one in southern New Hampshire, was like a fraction of the size of this. You guys were there.
Yeah.
Not too long before we moved. And that space, the adjacent space I was attached to was heated, and then I would keep like a thermostat controlled space heater in it. Which, because of the small size of the space, took up like a lot of room, even though it was just like one of those like stand up, oil heater things. But I became very kind of one of the first things that we've sorted out upon getting this property. And it was like super raw in here. It was structurally the same, but it was like super dirty and like none of the walls were finished or anything. But I figured out the heat right away. So I have, in the colder months, I think we're expecting a day this week that's going to be a high of -4 and like a low of -15. And like we heat out here primarily with pellets for like the really cold seasons, and then we have a mini split for the shoulder seasons. And like it doesn't really get hot here in the summer, but it was just a matter of taking care of it. And now I'm kind of trying to control humidity better because it gets really dry in here with the wood burning. Yeah. So I just got a new humidifier a couple days ago, and I'm trying to sort out.
Well, that's always like such a juggling, like trying to figure out how to keep your air good, keep the humidity at a certain level, and also make sure that you're not like trying to work on stuff with freezing fingers.
Yeah. Both for the equipment, but also for, ourselves. It's kind of like, you guys know, it's like, you're in your space so much that it's like, I think last year I have a humidity gauge thing, and it said like 15% or something at one point. And I was like, that's not healthy for me to be, hanging out in this for hours and hours and hours on that.
What? Why don't you just have nosebleeds all the time?
I mean, but that's not really something I ever really thought about, because I haven't worked with heating with a wood stove before, or a pellet stove or whatever. So it's just a whole different, it just dries it out way easier.
It's true.
So anyway.
Do you have some shares? Did you have another thing you wanted to ask? Okay. Do you have some shares, and are some of those shares what you're working on for this upcoming show?
Yeah, so my first share was that power washer that I kind of already shared. Well, I guess that was one of my shares.
Love it.
There's no hierarchy here.
No.
So power washer, it's still available for free online. So for anyone that wants to check it out.
Can people still buy a copy, though, if they want like a physical copy?
Some of 2, some of 5, and then some handful of a couple extras.
Yeah, I think that there's like a few of, there's definitely 2, issue 2, maybe, I think 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, maybe. So number 8 is available for free online. But if you want a physical copy, it's actually been kind of cool. People have returned every year to SGC, to our table or elsewhere, to like get the new edition because they like want a complete set.
Yeah.
So if you do want a physical copy of the new one, there are like 70 of them left, I think, maybe a little less, because we just kind of like formally put it up. So that's available. But the free version is still there with some missing content. All the interviews are there, but there's just a little less, fun in the mix, if you will. So we had to up the fun level for the physical hard copy readers.
Of course.
The people need the fun.
The true fans.
Yeah. They're gonna be like, "What the hell is this? Like, I get nothing out of this new spread."
It's just as fun.
The fun zone. Actually, the inspiration for the spread that I added, one of the spreads that I added was you remember those old placemats from like diners that had like fun and games on them, and there would be like advertisements for your local dry cleaners or whatever.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration for the added content.
That's great.
There's a little bit of that.
There's just like some junky little like maze in the corner that you could like do with a crayon,
and then a bunch of fake advertising.
I was going to do a maze, but John Irving did a maze in issue number 3. He beat us to the punch by like 4 or 5 issues with the maze. So, and it's a great maze. So number 3 sold out, but if you have number 3 already, I encourage you to do the maze.
Oh my gosh!
Shout out to John Irving and his lovely family. So yeah, so there's power washer. I have this print that I pulled out that is one that I recently printed for an artist that contacted me. Which I think there's a good picture of this on my Instagram feed. So this is a print by an artist named Rohan McDonald, who is out of Boston area. And this is a 5-color risograph print that I recently printed for him. A really small edition, like I think we did 10 of them, which is way less than I normally do, but it's just so nice of a print. It's just beautiful. So it's printed in, let's see, black, sunflower, mint, orange, and Kelly green is the lineup here.
So for something like this, he would send you a digital, like Photoshop file of each of these layers separated by the color, and then that gets translated to the Riso through a cord of some sort, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, so it's basically set up exactly like you would do separations for screen printing. The only difference is rather than having to have everything bitmapped, like if you were putting something on a screen, you would need a value to be, translated the dots. And for the Riso output, you can just keep it as gray values, and the machine will do that dot processing for you. So yeah, basically exactly what you said. He sent me separations, and then it's just kind of facilitating the production of it, more so in this case. This was ready to go when he sent it to me. But yeah, it's just super beautiful. He really used the colors nicely.
Yeah. I also love the pop out of the cat's head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a really nice really like that. So for like the cat, do you have to print, like you're just putting in the gray color wheel, whatever those things are, the giant ink cartridge thingy.
Yeah.
And then because it's kind of digital, it's dealing with those value shifts. You just print one layer of gray. You're not printing like the light gray and then also a dark gray. Am I right in that understanding?
Yeah, so it's actually just the black. So that solid black down there and the black key line everywhere else, the same layer as the gray, value in the cat, the 2 gray values in the cat, and then, in the rug down there. And I guess that's everything for the gray. But that's the same black ink. It's just represented as more or less it's a diffusion dither, really. So it's just the density of dots. So if you were to look really closely at this, the lighter section on the one side of the cat's head, you can kind of identify the dot pattern a little bit more than the darker gray, and then of course the black looks more solid. So
fascinating.
Yeah, and that's the same thing as over here with the two tones of the green. It's just the density of the dots.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Yeah,
that is cool.
So I'm kind of like didn't really touch on this when I talked about the studio, but like a lot of the main work that I do at the studio, besides collaborative editions, which is more kind of like for pleasure and the collaborative experience, is job printing for other artists and designers around the country. So I'm kind of doing a little bit less of it these days. I'm taking on fewer projects, and the projects I'm taking on are more involved productions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying that. So I'm kind of getting the opportunity to be a little bit more selective about, what I pursue. But it's still like, 10 prints of an amazing design is like so satisfying. It's like,
yeah, it's a really gorgeous print.
Yeah. So, so that's a Riso thing. And then are you guys showing stuff or is it just me?
We have a Riso thing too.
Oh yeah, I have that book.
We just got it. So fun fact, it got shipped right after it was made in 2020 and then got held at the border because I don't know, they don't like books. And we never got it. So then I wrote Henry and was like, hey, any chance like we could get one sent and just send it in like standard regular mail, like not FedEx, not whatever, just like straight up put a stamp on it. And it came right away. So we got this like basically at Christmas. I put it under the tree and we opened it, and it's so lovely.
It is.
I'm so pleased. So this was a project that Kyle was invited to be a part of.
Yeah, 2020.
In 2020, like a collection of images that were all Riso printed by Resolve Press in, where are they actually?
They're in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Which is about an hour-ish from Philly.
Yeah, they make some pretty incredible
Riso printing.
Like publications. I really, really like their work.
Really beautiful stuff.
But yeah, I can do a little. It's like it's a calendar binding, which I really like a spiral bound. It makes me feel like it has like the size of a calendar. I'm trying to figure out how long printing something like this would take, because it seems like they would have to change the colors out so much, because there was no like color palette restriction.
Well, there was. I think there was like 2 colors. You couldn't choose gold, and you couldn't choose, I think, one other color.
Yeah.
Like, look how beautiful this is.
I think that's Katie Garth's print, if I remember correctly. That's a great print.
It is...
I like how there's like a visual index at the back
14.
that like links up who's there.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yep, it is. You're right.
Katie Garth.
Yeah, last stop.
Good eye.
So anyways, it was just like, it was fun to have art as something to open under the tree. Yeah. And it's also just like, it's just a really nice publication and an interesting like reflection on the beginning parts of the pandemic, because like I think that you got this project.
Well, it was after the pandemic started. I think Henry put it together and just shortly after it all happened. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this one I think is actually my favorite.
Whose is that?
Let's just like take that beauty in. I really, really love that. It is where is that? 25. Paolo Puck.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. I really, really love this.
Yeah, it's such a nice collection of work.
It is, and honestly, like going onto the Resolve website and looking at some of the other publications that they've put out, man, I just want to like
buy a Riso printer now?
Well, I was going to say build more bookshelves.
I love how you're like, I want to collect.
That's probably...
I want to make.
I want to collect. Yeah, I'm more of a collector. I have no interest in getting a Riso printer. They seem like it would become the only way that I printed, and we've moved too many presses.
Yeah. The books are a more stable purchase, I think. Less likely to break.
Yeah. Just only joy comes from them, which is like...
No frustration.
Yeah.
Besides the whole border thing, you have to square that away before you start working on this books.
Yeah, exactly. Just send it as a regular post. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's our first share. That
is awesome. That's a great share. Okay, let's see. So the other things that I have here are I don't know that I've ever shared my own work on.
You haven't. I'm so excited.
So this stuff's not really like, it's not even cropped down yet. You know, like it's just like hot off the press, and I haven't trimmed the size or anything. So you're not seeing sort of like the final compositions, if you will. And I work a lot with negative space, so it's kind of like there's a lot of that happening. So these are two prints that are like brand new. This is one. They're both linocuts. Here's one, and then here's another one.
Yeah. I love seeing how your work has like translated these forms over time in different ways.
Yeah, you know, I think that there was like, I don't know how I should hold this. Hey guys. It's interesting. So like I started making some of this work. I guess like I really started making some work that looked at architecture, or my personal architecture at the end of undergrad, but it wasn't really the body of work I pursued. Mm-hmm. And then I eventually like dove into it, you know, for real at some point in grad school. But I got away from sort of like making very clearly recognizable like structures for a while. They were more like abstracted and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding myself, I think part of that was being influenced by being told, you know, do this, don't do this, or like that's good, that's not, you know, you're like told all these things by people, you know, in critiques and studio visits and all this stuff. And I don't really care anymore. So I appreciate everyone's input that has taken the time over the years. It's not to say anything like that, but I'm just kind of like, I think the thing is, I was just talking to John Irving about this the other day. I'm realizing something that I never realized before, which is that all of this stuff I've been making is actually a lot more autobiographical than I knew it was. And I have not thought about it that way at all at any point until like last month. Like it's been very like emotionless for me, and I think part of the aesthetic is like has that in it. It's been very cold and like removed.
Yeah.
So now that I'm sort of like coming to terms with the fact that this stuff actually ties back to me very deeply, I'm kind of like, if I want to make something that looks like it's very clearly an A-frame structure, like I'm gonna fucking make that.
Yeah. No, I think that's
like, you know. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse. You can bleep me.
Oh no, you certainly can. We're not monetized on YouTube, so we can
drop F-bombs all over the place.
So I'm working on a show that is going to, this is like the final few weeks. I'm finishing up some work for a show that opens on February 4th, I believe it is. It's a 2-person show at a really nice gallery in the town that we just moved to. So it's going to be the first time that I've shown work around here. And the gallery is called Wren. The gallery at Wren, so W-R-E-N.
Cool.
And showing with a photographer named Timothy Jones, who shoots large format 8x10, and all of his work is contact, silver gelatin, and platinum palladium prints. So it's like very process heavy and you know, all monochrome stuff. So I'm kind of like wrapping up a bunch of stuff. I have 4 or 5 other things that are like in the works that I just have to like get on press this week. And it's the other thing that's been on my mind, you know, as I've been working through this stuff, is I've been doing more work that's a cross between like letterpress and risograph, or wood or linocut and risograph, whatever, because I like the different surface qualities and kind of aesthetics that the different things offer. Mm-hmm. I really like the organic halftone look that Riso stuff gives you. Like it's different than were you to pre-create something in Photoshop. So I had been planning on doing some of that hybrid work for the show, and as I've been working through these pieces, like I just really like the simplicity of just like black ink on off-white paper, and I'm just leaving it there.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I think like you're getting those interesting like textures just in the way that you're handling the carving of the lino. You know, you have one texture on.
You got 3 tones in
it. Yeah, like on the. I'm trying to think, like our cameras are swapped. Yeah, yes. That side, and then
inside wall. I guess.
Yeah, and then the flats, and then the like more spaced kind of like feels really like rigid and hard, like boards on the side of a building that's on the exterior. So. Yeah, I like how the interior feels like softer and warmer and like inviting, and the outside is like more structured and hard and angular.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'll show you one more thing just because it's related to this.
Yeah.
So this is going to go in the show, but I haven't done any. This is just like a quick proof. I have to clean it up still. And I want to show this because I carved this in 2018 in Ireland, and I haven't looked at it like since then. And I never editioned it. I just like carved it, proofed it, and then like it's been wrapped up and stored away. And there's part of it that looks exactly like the thing I just showed you, and I'm like kind of weirded out by it. But so this is this print.
Oh yeah.
And like this right here is like the exact same thing as this here. And there's like a multi-year gap, and it's not conscious at all. So I'm kind of like, I think that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So this is like just kind of like a hodgepodge of forms that are down the street from my friend Mick's house in Cork City, Ireland.
Cool.
But yeah. So anyway, this is kind of like this and one other piece were like sort of the first pieces I started working with this texture more, and I really like doing it mostly because I just really like carving the straight lines in kind of like repetition. I find it very meditative. Yeah. And it ends up like working out aesthetically, but I think more so I like the doing of the carving. The doing of the carving. I like the carving of the lines.
Are any of the plates kicking around like to look at?
Yeah, here, let's see. I have two of them here. Well, I guess it's three of them technically. The one that I just showed you from Ireland's on the press. I've been printing all of these on a Vandercook, so that's locked up. But this is the one. So
you're taking the lino and you're mounting it to.
Yep, it's mounted. This is mounted to. This is like 3/4 inch plywood, and it's not quite type high, but it gives me enough height that I can work with stuff.
Shove some paper behind
it. Yeah, it's like a stack of chipboard. And the main reason I like doing that is because this is the other one. So this is actually cut up into segments, and I kind of spaced it out on the press. So so you can kind of see.
Yeah,
cool.
That's fun.
And I can still fit furniture, or not furniture, reglets and leads and stuff. So you can kind of see the lines in the print.
Oh, yeah.
So
it kind of goes back to the roots of this, like when you were working with just like pieces of
found objects. And other shapes as a matrix.
Yeah, and I think that I still have like everything that I've ever cut up in the past. So I think that some of that stuff will end up like being paired up with some of these blocks. So all the stuff I'm working on right now is all going to be mounted exactly on the same material, so that everything that I make will be interchangeable, basically. Like usually what I'll do is after I finish printing the edition of this block, for example, I'll probably like start chopping it up on the saw just to like have some new bits to work with. So yeah.
I love that as a process. Our professor Otis used to work like that, where he would. I
think he still does.
Yeah, like he would just have like a tub of matrices. And, everything was sort of like played with as collage, and, it was basically like an idea box. He would just like bring the idea box out and start mixing and matching, concepts from the past with things that he's interested in now. And, I think it's a really like interesting way to play with ideas. I feel like I always have like a little box of like cut up pieces of paintings, and I don't generally end up doing anything actually with them, but I'll like create sort of like compositional thoughts, and then I just like pull them all back together and throw them back into the box of what basically looks like garbage. It's like a fun way to play with like what forms are working together, how big should something be, how many little things can I get away with in a composition before it feels like everything's too much the same size.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of, I'm someone that has a tendency to be very like too structured, like in the way that I like approach like working something else. So this sort of forces me to turn it on its head a little bit and like let it sort of evolve as I go. And I also like that you can just as well flip over, and if you need a wood grain, I could carve this same shape on the back and have it in wood instead, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So looks like there's still some ink on this block.
It's getting a little bit inky.
I should not pick up this perfectly white mug again. Or these prints.
Or those prints.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
We have one more share. I just realized that this like is a really nice like raised ink, whatever this is. So this is another little like book zine by Henry. and it's called 10 of My Favorite Photos Stored on My iPhone, Photocopied for You. So that's what the title of the the book is. And then
I love it.
Here are the photocopies.
Amazing.
They're like like on a, you can kind of see that there's something that they're different. They're not just like a black square.
Anyways, it goes on like that, and then at the end it says, "I appreciate this." Oh wait, this is like, "I appreciate this opportunity to connect with you."
Oh, I love it. I like a book that says exactly what it is on the cover.
Yeah. Henry's humor just gets me every time. I just love it so much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So that's our second share.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Very nice.
Well, as always,
it was a pleasure talking with you.
It's so fun having you and seeing what you're doing, and yeah, just catching up and hearing little bits more about like your journey and, you know, how everything came to be and where everything's going every time we get to like sit down and have these chats. It's just so fun.
Yeah, it's the best. Thank you both so much for having me.
Yeah.
And hanging out.
Enjoy the rest of your Friday.